Today, we are diving deep into the medieval Islamic worldview. And let me tell you, it's a perspective that is profoundly different from how we see things today. It's a world where the fate of giant empires is directly connected to the nature of a single, tiny atom. We're going to explore how an entire civilization understood reality itself, from the cosmos all the way down to creation.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off on the big geopolitical stage, looking at the three great powers of the medieval world. Then, we're going to journey inward, into the mystical heart of Islam, that's Sufism. From there, we'll shift gears to what I like to call the physics of faith, a totally rational system for understanding reality, which, you'll see, leads to a universe of atoms that's constantly being recreated by God. And finally, we'll tie all these threads together to see how they form one single cohesive worldview.
All right, first things first, let's set the stage. If you want to understand how a civilization thinks, you've got to understand the world it lived in. And for medieval Islam, that world was basically a pressure cooker of competing global powers.
This quote, it really flips our modern perspective right on its head. I mean, think about it. Today, we tend to identify with our nationality first. But back then, not even close. Your primary identity, your deepest loyalty was to your faith. And that one simple fact shaped absolutely everything, from politics and war to art and just daily life.
So the known world was really dominated by these three massive self-contained civilizations. You had the Islamic world, you had Greek Christendom, which was centered on the Byzantine Empire, and then Latin Christendom over in Western Europe. What's so fascinating is that all of them, in their own way, saw themselves as heirs to the Roman Empire. They were constantly at each other's throats, but structurally, they were pretty similar. And of course, each one was absolutely certain that it, and only it, held the ultimate truth.
Now, Islam's arrival on that world stage was nothing short of explosive. Seriously, in just 100 years, a single century, from the death of the Prophet Muhammad to the Battle of Tours in France, a brand new empire was carved out. It stretched all the way from Spain to the borders of India. This lightning-fast expansion created that third great power block and completely redrew the map of the world for centuries to come.
But, a civilization isn't just about empires and armies. So let's pivot now, from the external world of politics to the internal world of the spirit.
Within Islam, this really powerful mystical tradition called Sufism emerged. And this path wasn't so much about rules or doctrines. Nope, Sufism is all about seeking a direct, personal, and totally transformative experience of the divine. You could call it a journey of love, where the ultimate goal is to dissolve your own ego and become one with God.
And this wasn't a static thing. It evolved over time. It started out as this movement of early ascetics who were just focused on piety and renouncing worldly stuff. But then, it blossomed into this incredibly sophisticated tradition of divine love, championed by some of Islam's greatest thinkers. And finally, it became this huge institutional force, spreading across the globe through organized spiritual brotherhoods, or tariqas, many of which are still around today.
So we've seen the external world of politics and the internal path of mysticism. But there was a third way to understand reality, and that was the path of pure, hard reason.
And this is the key question that really drove another major intellectual tradition, right? If Sufism was the path of the heart, this was the path of the mind. How could you use logic and rational argument to defend your faith and, while you're at it, build a complete model of the entire universe?
The answer was a discipline called kalam. Now think of it as a mix of philosophy, physics, and theology all rolled into one. It was this hugely ambitious project that used the tools of logic to tackle the biggest questions you can imagine. What is the world made of? Why is there something instead of nothing? And what, exactly, is God's relationship to his creation?
And the answer these theologians came up with was, well, surprisingly atomic. We're talking long before modern science. They laid out this vision of reality built from the ground up, starting with the smallest, most fundamental bits of existence.
Okay, so this system breaks reality down into two main ideas. First, you've got jawhar, or substance. Just think of this as the fundamental, indivisible atom, the basic stuff of the universe. But here's the catch. On its own, this atom has no features. It's a blank slate. It needs the second concept, arad, or accident. Accidents are all the temporary qualities, things like color, motion, heat, even life itself, that give substance its characteristics.
So this atom, this kohar, has some very specific properties. It can't be broken down, it's created by God. And this is the really crucial part. All atoms are fundamentally identical and totally featureless. So what does that mean? It means the difference between, say, a rock and a rose isn't in the atoms themselves. No, it's in the temporary accidents that God attaches to them. And that one idea, well, it has some truly mind-bending consequences.
And now we get to where this whole theory goes from interesting to just radical. One of the most influential schools of thought, the Ash'ari school, followed this atomic logic all the way to its ultimate and frankly, startling conclusion. They really zeroed in on the nature of those temporary qualities, the accidents. They realized that if these qualities are fleeting, if they just come and go, it tells us something profound, not just about objects, but about the very nature of time and existence itself.
Here it is. This is their core premise. An accident, let's say the quality of redness in an apple, cannot last through time. They argued it exists for only one single, indivisible instant, and then it's gone. It just ceases to be.
So what on earth does this mean for reality? Let's just walk through it. Okay, so God creates the accident of red in an atom. It exists for an instant. Then God annihilates it, and in the very next instant, he creates a new, almost identical accident of red. This means the persistence of the world, the fact that the apple seems to stay red, is an illusion. It is actually being constantly, actively recreated by God, moment by moment by moment. A great way to get your head around this is to think of reality like a movie. We see continuous motion, but we know it's just a series of still frames flashing by really fast. Well, in the Ash'ari view, God is the projector. But here's the twist. He isn't just showing the frames, he is literally creating every single frame for every atom in the universe from absolute nothing in every single instant.
So, how do we pull all these threads together? The empire, the mystic's quest, the theologian's atoms, how did they form a single, coherent worldview? Let's take a look.
You know, this intellectual world wasn't a monolith. Not at all. There were some really lively debates. For example, the Ash'ari school argued that God is the only direct cause of everything. Fire doesn't burn cotton. God creates the burning when the two are near. But the Kharijite school pushed back. They said, well, created things and humans do have real, though God-given, powers of causality and choice. This just shows you the incredible intellectual diversity that existed within this shared framework.
But ultimately, these weren't seen as contradictory ideas. You could be a loyal citizen of a global empire, a mystic seeking union with the divine, and a philosopher who saw the universe being remade in every instant. They were all just seen as different paths leading to the same fundamental truth. A world that is utterly and completely dependent on God.
So, let's do a quick recap. The medieval world was basically defined by three huge rival religious civilizations. Within Islam, you had Sufism offering that deep mystical path to God. At the very same time, Kalam theology was using reason to build this incredible model of reality based on atoms, which led to the mind-blowing idea of continuous creation. And these weren't at odds. They were seen as complementary ways to understand truth.
And that leaves us with a final, really profound question to chew on. If the universe is literally brand new in every single instant, if there's no necessary link between this moment and the next, what does that actually mean for our understanding of reality? It challenges our most basic assumptions about cause and effect, about time itself, and even free will, leaving us to wonder about a world held together only by the constant active will of its creator.